Welcome back. Chapter 7, Total Surplus. We're going to make this short and sweet. Again, this is about understanding how the market functions. Hopefully it'll fill in the gaps of what this graph looks like. But I want to start by looking at consumer surplus, because consumer surplus and producer surplus will make up total surplus. Consumer surplus. This is the benefit a consumer gets from buying a good or a service. And it's found by the value a person places in a good minus the price they pay. So for example, let's say that your textbook costs $200. I take that back. Let's say you value it at $200 because you love some economics. So let's say that the $200 for the textbook, this is the value you place on it. Its price, though, is a steal at $95. So my consumer surplus is going to be the value I take away from the book minus the cost. My consumer surplus in this case is going to be $105 of consumer surplus. Again, it's just saying, hey, I get this much warm, fuzzy feeling from buying something, but I only paid this much, so I had this much consumer surplus. Warm, fuzzy value, $200. The price is $95 I paid, so I get $105 of consumer surplus. The lower the price on anything, the greater the consumer surplus is going to be. So let's say that we continue to value it at $200, but the price drops down to $50. Then our consumer surplus is going to grow to $150. But let's say that instead of having our value at 200, our value is at 95. Do we still buy this textbook? Well, the answer is value at 95 we say you are indifferent. You don't care if you buy it or you don't. You're not better off, you're not worse off, so you're indifferent. Now, that's all that we really know about consumer surplus, except where is it found? Where do we find consumer surplus? And for this, I'm going to show you on a graph. Label as usual, price and quantity, upward sloping supply curve, downward sloping demand curve. So the consumer surplus, and let's say that we're at equilibrium, just to make it nice, we'll call this P1, Q1. The consumer surplus is found in the area that is going to be below the demand curve and above the price. So everything in this triangle is going to be consumer surplus. And again, if I lowered the price, the consumer surplus would grow. That's one half of this chapter. The second half is producer surplus. And producer surplus, a way to think of it, is the profit a firm makes from selling a good or service. It is the price the firm gets minus the cost of production, which is another way of saying it is your profit, total revenue minus your costs. So let's stick with this textbook example. Let's say that it costs $70 to make the textbook. And they're selling it at so producer surplus i.e. profit is going to be 95 minus 70, so I have a producer surplus of $25. That's my profit from each book that I sell. And where is this producer surplus found? I should say before I go there, again, the higher the price for the producer, the greater the producer surplus will be. And this is found similar to consumer surplus, also graphically. Let's go ahead and draw our supply and demand graph. quantity. It is the area that's going to be below the price and above the supply curve. So everything in this triangle is now going to be producer surplus. And again, if I raise the price, then that's going to add more producer surplus. So we've got producer surplus, we've got consumer surplus. Total surplus is the name of this chapter. And very simply put, total surplus equals consumer surplus plus producer surplus. We add the two together and we get our total surplus for the market. And the question that needs to be answered then is, well, where do we maximize total surplus? Where do we maximize the benefit for society? And gratefully for us, it's at that magic place known as equilibrium. Total surplus is maximized. If you had, looking at this graph, if we tried to raise the price, you would add more producer surplus, but at the negativity of taking away your consumer surplus would be right here. The same down here, if you lowered the price, you would add consumer surplus, but by giving up producer surplus. And so again, the place where we maximize our total surplus, and total surplus again is consumer surplus plus producer surplus, is at equilibrium. The market wants to get back there, and it benefits society for being there, because when we maximize total surplus, we're telling us that our society is getting the best benefit from both buyers and sellers combined. When in doubt, graph it out.